The garage still smelled of motor oil and dried paint, just like it had 15 years ago. Standing in the doorway, I ran my fingers along the workbench where it all began, where dreams were born and betrayed in equal measure. The old fluorescent light flickered overhead, casting irregular shadows on the cement floor, now clean and empty save for a few carefully preserved tools mounted on the wall. "Mr. Chun." My assistant's voice pulled me from my reverie. "The Forbes photographer is here." I nodded, adjusting my collar. "Tell them I'll be right there." But I didn't move, not just yet. This moment, standing in my old garage while a Forbes team waited to photograph me for their cover story, felt too poetic to rush. 15 years earlier, this same space had been cluttered with circuit boards, soldering irons, and the desperate energy of 4 young engineers who thought they could change the world. We were right about that part, at least. We just didn't know who would end up doing the changing. The prototype sat on this very workbench, its casing held together with electrical tape and hope. Marcus had called it ugly. Sarah said it looked like a science fair project. James wouldn't even touch it, afraid it might electrocute him. But I knew what they couldn't see. This wasn't just another failed experiment. This was the future. "Your obsession with quantum encryption is going to bankrupt us all," Marcus had said that final night, his voice echoing off the garage walls. "We need to focus on practical applications, things we can sell now." I could still see them standing there, Marcus with his perfectly pressed shirt, Sarah nervously adjusting her glasses, and James hanging back by the door, already halfway gone in his mind. They were my partners, my friends. We'd started this journey together in college, for brilliant minds with complementary skills and a shared vision. Or so I thought. "The market isn't ready for this level of security," Sarah added, trying to sound gentle but firm. "The infrastructure doesn't exist. The costs are astronomical. Be reasonable, Michael." Reasonable. That word had haunted me throughout my life. Be reasonable, Michael, when I wanted to skip 2 grades in middle school. Be reasonable when I suggested quantum computing could revolutionize cybersecurity during my master's thesis defense. Be reasonable when I insisted on pursuing patents that my partners deemed worthless. "We're taking the practical patents," Marcus announced. "The ones for conventional encryption methods, the software implementations, the ones that will actually make money. You can keep your quantum pipe dreams." They had the legal right. Our partnership agreement, drafted when we were too young and naive to know better, gave them majority control. 3 against 1. Democracy at its finest. I watched them walk away that night, taking with them not just the patents but also my trust in the people I'd considered family. The garage door rolled shut with a finality that felt like a coffin lid closing. But that ending became my beginning. I spent the next month living on energy drinks and determination, sleeping on a cot in the garage. My savings dwindled. My parents called daily, begging me to get a real job at some tech company. Even my younger sister, usually my biggest supporter, suggested I should take a break and regroup. They all missed what I saw with crystal clarity. Quantum encryption wasn't just another security solution. It was the only solution for a future where traditional encryption would be rendered obsolete by quantum computing itself. I wasn't just building a better lock. I was preparing for a time when all the old locks would become useless. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning, after 48 sleepless hours of coding and recalibrating. I'd simplified the quantum key distribution system, making it possible to implement with existing fiber optic networks. The prototype hummed to life, its status lights blinking in a steady rhythm that seemed to match my racing heartbeat. It worked. Not just in theory, not just in controlled lab conditions, but in the real world. I'd created a quantum encryption system that could be implemented without requiring a complete overhaul of existing infrastructure. The cost would be a fraction of what my partners had feared. I called my sister first. Lisa answered on the 3rd ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Michael, it's 4 in the morning." "I did it," I said, my hands shaking as I stared at the test results on my laptop screen. "It actually works." There was a long pause. "Are you still in the garage?" "Listen to me," I insisted. "I solved the implementation problem. I can make quantum encryption work with existing networks. Do you understand what this means?" Another pause, shorter this time. "You need funding." That's why I loved my sister. She always cut straight to the heart of things. "Everything I have is in this prototype," I admitted. "And it's not enough." "Give me 3 days," she said. "Don't talk to anyone else about this. Promise me." I promised. What I didn't tell her was that I had no one else to talk to anyway. My former partners had made sure of that, spreading word through our professional network that I'd had some kind of breakdown, that I was pursuing impossible technology and couldn't be trusted with investment capital. Lisa came through. 3 days later, she walked into my garage with Catherine Wong, a venture capitalist known for her unconventional bets on emerging technologies. Catherine spent 6 hours with me, asking questions that proved she understood not just the business implications, but the technical complexities of what I'd created. Your former partners, she said as she packed up her laptop, they're investing heavily in conventional encryption methods, aren't they? I nodded. They're launching their first product line next month. Catherine smiled. It wasn't a particularly warm expression. How would you like to make them obsolete? The next few years passed in a blur of development, testing, and scaling. We named the company Quantum Shield, though I fought against the name at first. Too obvious, I thought. Catherine insisted that sometimes obvious was good. Let them know exactly what we do, she said. Let them worry about how we do it. We launched our first product line 2 years after that night in the garage. By then, my former partner's company, Secure Core Solutions, had established itself as a leading provider of conventional encryption services. They were doing well by normal standards. Their stock was up. They had offices in 3 cities. But they hadn't seen what was coming. None of them had. The quantum computing revolution hit the cybersecurity world like a tsunami. Suddenly, every conventional encryption method was potentially vulnerable. Companies panicked. Governments scrambled. In the midst of this chaos, Quantum Shield stood ready with a solution that had been years in the making. Our first major contract came from a global banking consortium. The second, barely a week later, from a coalition of healthcare providers. Then came the government contracts. Within 6 months, we couldn't scale fast enough to meet demand. I hired the best minds in quantum computing, built state-of-the-art research facilities, and expanded our product line to cover every aspect of quantum-safe security. The garage where it all began became a sort of personal museum, preserved exactly as it had been on that last night with my former partners. 5 years after Catherine walked into my garage, Quantum Shield went public. The IPO broke records for a cybersecurity company. I rang the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, thinking about all the nights I'd spent sleeping on that cot in the garage, all the people who said it couldn't be done. The Forbes article was Catherine's idea. It's time, she said, to tell your story. I agreed, but with one condition. The photo shoot had to start in the garage. The photographer understood immediately, setting up lights to capture the contrast between the humble workspace and the success it had spawned. As I posed for the final shots, my phone buzzed with a notification. Secure Core Solutions had just announced massive layoffs and a strategic restructuring. Their conventional encryption products were becoming obsolete faster than they could adapt. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt a strange mix of sadness and determination. This wasn't about revenge. It never had been. This was about seeing a future that others couldn't imagine and having the courage to build it. Mr. Chun, my assistant appeared in the doorway again. Your next appointment is here. I nodded, taking one last look around the garage. The Forbes cover would come out next week. Michael Chun, the quantum revolutionary. But the real story wasn't about me. It was about believing in something when no one else would. It was about standing alone in a garage with nothing but an idea and the stubborn belief that it could work. I'm ready, I said, stepping out of the garage and into the sunlight. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because on that very morning, as I prepared to share my journey with the world, my former partners were about to walk into my headquarters lobby. They didn't know I was expecting them. They didn't know a lot of things. That's the thing about quantum mechanics. Nothing is certain until you observe it. And I was about to observe something very interesting indeed. The Quantum Shield headquarters stood 40 stories high in the heart of Silicon Valley, its quantum-inspired architecture a testament to the future we'd built. The exterior was a seamless blend of glass and advanced materials that changed opacity based on ambient light conditions. Another innovation we'd developed along the way. But it was the lobby that always caught visitors' attention. The space was deliberately designed to tell our story. The original prototype, now carefully restored, sat in a glass case near the reception desk. Behind it, a massive digital wall displayed real-time visualizations of our quantum encryption networks protecting data across the globe. And today, prominently featured on that same wall, was the new banner. Michael Chun, Inventor of the Year. I watched through the security feed as they entered, Marcus, Sarah, and James, looking both older and smaller than I remembered. They'd aged more than the years would suggest, their confident strides replaced by uncertain steps. Marcus's perfectly pressed shirt now seemed to hang loosely on his frame. Sarah's nervous habit of adjusting her glasses had evolved into an almost constant motion. James, still hanging back, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "They're here," Catherine said, appearing at my office door. After all these years, she remained my most trusted advisor and friend. "Are you sure about this?" I nodded, straightening my tie. "They need to understand. Not just about the technology, but about vision. About faith." The security feed showed them stopping dead in their tracks as they noticed the banner. Marcus's face went pale. Sarah dropped her portfolio. James actually took a step backward. "Mr. Chin will see you now," my assistant announced, right on cue. I took the private elevator down to the lobby, using those 30 seconds to center myself. This wasn't about revenge. It never had been. This was about something much more important. The doors opened, and I stepped out into the lobby. For a moment, none of them seemed to recognize me. The garage inventor in faded jeans had been replaced by a CEO in a bespoke suit. Success had given me something that all their doubts never could: confidence. "Welcome to Quantum Shield," I said, watching their expressions shift from shock to recognition to something approaching fear. "It's been a while." Marcus recovered first, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Michael, you've done well for yourself. We saw the news about Secure Core," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I'm sorry about the layoffs." Sarah flinched. James looked at the floor. Marcus's fake smile faltered. "That's actually why we're here," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. We need help." I led them to our main conference room, its windows overlooking the city we'd all once dreamed of conquering together. They sat clustered at one end of the long table, leaving me alone at the other, a physical representation of the gulf between us. "Secure Core is finished," Marcus admitted, his earlier bravado completely gone. "Conventional encryption is dead. Everyone's moving to quantum-safe solutions." "Your solutions." "We've lost everything," Sarah added. "The company, our investments, our reputation. Our patents are worthless," James spoke up for the first time. "Everything we took, everything we thought was valuable." I let the silence stretch for a moment, remembering all the nights I'd imagined this scenario. In my darker moments, I'd fantasized about watching them beg, about turning them away like they'd turned away from me. But sitting here now, seeing them broken, those fantasies felt hollow. "Do you know why I preserved the garage?" I asked, surprising them with the apparent non sequitur. They exchanged confused looks. Marcus shook his head. "It's not about nostalgia," I continued. "It's about remembering what it feels like to believe in something when no one else does. To stand alone with an idea and choose faith over fear." I pressed a button, and the conference room's windows transformed into display screens, showing our latest quantum encryption statistics. "What you're seeing is the future we could have built together. Not just a successful company, but a revolution in how we think about security, about technology, about possibility itself." "We were wrong," Sarah said softly. "About everything." "No," I corrected her. "You were wrong about being afraid. The technology was always going to work. The market was always going to need it. The only variable was belief." Marcus leaned forward. "Why did you agree to meet with us? After everything we did?" "Because you need to understand something," I said, standing up. "This isn't about winning or losing. It's not about revenge or vindication. It's about vision." I pressed another button, and the displays showed a new project, one we hadn't announced yet. "What you're looking at is the next generation of quantum security. It's not just encryption anymore. It's a complete paradigm shift in how we handle data, communication, even reality itself." Their eyes widened as they took in the implications of what they were seeing. It was the same look I'd had in the garage all those years ago, when the first prototype whirred to life. "We're looking for people who understand both the old world and the new," I said carefully. "People who have learned the hard way what happens when you choose fear over innovation." The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. "Are you offering us jobs?" James asked incredulously. "I'm offering you a chance to be part of the future instead of clinging to the past," I corrected. "Not as executives. Not as partners. As engineers." As innovators. The way we started. Sarah was crying silently. Marcus looked like he'd been hit by lightning. James was already pulling out his laptop, his fingers itching to explore the new technology. Why? Marcus managed to ask. Why would you help us after what we did? I walked to the window, looking down at the city below. Because 15 years ago, in a garage, 4 young engineers thought they could change the world. 3 of them lost their way, but that doesn't mean they can't find it again. I turned back to face them. The quantum revolution isn't over. It's barely begun. The question is, are you ready to believe this time? One by one, they nodded. Not with the desperate gratitude of people being thrown a lifeline, but with the dawning wonder of engineers seeing a new possibility. Welcome to Quantum Shield, I said again, but this time with a different meaning. Let's change the world. As they left that evening, I returned to my office, where Catherine was waiting. That was not what I expected, she admitted. I thought you'd want revenge. I smiled. Revenge is looking backward. I'm more interested in looking forward. She nodded thoughtfully. The Forbes article comes out tomorrow. The whole world will know your story. No, I corrected her, looking out at the setting sun casting long shadows across the city. They'll know the beginning of the story. The real revolution is still coming. I thought about the garage, preserved as a reminder not of where we started, but of what it means to believe. Sometimes the greatest achievements aren't just about proving others wrong. They're about showing them how to be right in a whole new way. The next morning, as the Forbes cover hit newsstands across the country, I walked into our research lab. Marcus, Sarah, and James were already there, heads bent over the new quantum protocols, arguing excitedly about implementation strategies. They looked up as I entered, and for a moment, I saw in their eyes the same passion that had brought us together in that garage 15 years ago. Ready to change the world? I asked. This time, they understood exactly what that meant.